Мікрофон працює, так?
Dear guests, participants, welcome to this event. Here we are at the round table to discuss the results of the survey which the Kiev Sociology International Institute has conducted, and this survey was on the opinion of the Ukrainian population about the environmental consequences of the war in May 2022. This survey was contracted by the APENA 2 project funded by the EU. My name is Anna Belevitina. I am the communications manager of the APENA 2 project. Today, this roundtable will host the representatives of the authorities, the Sociology Institute, the NGOs. We will discuss the result of the survey, we'll present these results, and we will find ways to improve communication with the Ukrainian population on the consequences of the war for the environment. I would like to introduce the panelists. First, Deputy Minister of the Environment, Ruslan Hrechanyk. Also, here we have some online participants. Due to war and due to security considerations, most of the panelists will join online. We have Ms. Allio from the EU Delegation to Ukraine, and Ivelina Dilovska, the director of APENA 2 project. So the presentation of the results will be conducted by Yvetta Delikatna. And also, we will have Victoria Zakhozha, representative of the Kiev International Institute of Sociology. We will have Tetyana Tymochko, the head of All-Ukrainian Environmental League, and the chairman of Change Communication NGO, Olena, Lobova. I will be the moderator. This roundtable will last an hour and a half. First, we'll have a round of introduction. Deputy Minister will open, and Ms. Chloé Allio, the head of Operations Section, Economic Cooperation, Energy, Infrastructure and Environment from the EU Delegation to Ukraine, and Ivelina Dilovska, the director of APENA 2. They will be opening. Next, Yvetta Delikatna will be presenting the results of the survey, and then we will have the round of questions, and we will have our experts. So my request to our online participants is to mute your microphone whenever you are not speaking. This will help us. We do have a question from Chloé and Ivelina, because they do not have English interpretation. How can they get interpretation? Let us check with the technicians. And how do I share the screen? Because I don't have the rights to share the screen. Okay, we will be now figuring these matters. Yeah, so if you could please tell Ivelina and Chloé, perhaps they should join with the different link or something. Yeah, hopefully the interpretation will be coming. This is English interpretation channel. We will send the link to the YouTube channel where the English interpretation is available. So Chloé and Ivelina, can they speak here? Yvetta? Sorry, I didn't hear the beginning of your question. So, Ivelina and Chloé, will they be able to say the opening work in English here? Yeah, sure. They all are here in this Zoom event. It's just they don't understand what we are saying. And that's why they couldn't figure out what's the interpretation situation. Okay, they will be getting the link soon. So my proposal is to start with the opening word and we'll start with First Deputy Minister for the Environment and Natural Resources of Ukraine, Ruslan Hrechanyk. You will now open. Thank you. Dear colleagues, journalists, this war made environmental problems even harsher. So the damage which the Russians are incurring in our territory, it's not a matter only for today. This is also the problem for the future, and it is a global problem. Some environmental hazards are life-threatening. So if we ensure awareness, if we are cognizant and aware, we'll be able to prevent and to avoid the consequences for our people and our territory. The values of Ukrainians are similar to the values of people all over the world. It's life, health, children. These are the core values. So in order to preserve what's valuable for us, in order to preserve our territory, we need to be informed. Today, I want to say thanks to the EU delegation and to the contractors of this survey, and to APENA 2 project, and to KIIS International Sociology Institute. They are really aware of the importance of this issue. So, thanks for coming together here. And together we shall think how to improve awareness of the population. So thank you for not staying aside. I hope we'll have fruitful roundtable. Thank you, Ruslan. Next, the suggestion is to give the floor to Chloé Allio, the head of operations section, the economic cooperation, energy, infrastructure, and environment.
Chloé.
Я дуже рада вітати вас від імені Європейського Союзу.
just I would like to say that I'm very here today to listen and to discuss with you the results of this survey done by KIIS International Institute of Sociology in the framework of our APENA 2 project. And first, let me start by recalling first really that the EU stands with Ukraine. We stand with you, we're supporting Ukraine since the war started, and we hope very much that this survey will contribute to improving communication with the citizens on these very important issues, and that it will also contribute to improve contributions to green recovery and reconstruction in Ukraine when the war is over.
Thank you very much.
In the European Union, we pay a strong attention to communication with citizens, to awareness raising about the environment. And we believe that the involvement and the commitment of citizens is really crucial in success of green transition. So we know that people are often more concerned about their jobs, about heating their homes, about making ends meet, which is very natural, and environment is often not their key focus. But this can change through engagement of public institutions, of non-governmental actors, with the citizens to explain how important the environment is and how important it is for their life. In the current situation in Ukraine, where the Russian aggression has caused very large-scale damages to the environment, it's even more important to attract the attention of citizens in Ukraine to environmental threats and risks. And they need to be aware, they need to support, and they need to become the driving force to request authorities to ensure that the post-war recovery will be green. So we know that rebuilding will be a challenge, but a green and sustainable recovery and a green reconstruction can bring many advantages to your country and Ukrainian citizens for the long term. And in the recent communication of the European Commission on Ukraine relief and reconstruction, it was underlined that it will be key to support Ukraine recovery, and that will go hand in hand with supporting green transition. And finally, I would like to conclude by thanking everyone who contributed to this survey, and also thanking the Ukraine Media Center that is hosting this event.
Thank you so much, and glory to Ukraine. To heroes the glory.
For your support of Ukraine, for your support of important projects in Ukraine. Thank you very much. Next, I want to tell word to Ivelina Dilovska. She is head of project APENA 2. Ivelina Dilovska, директорка проекту APENA 2. Ivelina, do you hear us?
Good afternoon, everyone. Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Hello? Yes? Yeah, hello. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to say a few words about our project. The main objective of APENA 2 is to support the Ministry of Environmental Protection and Natural Resources in the process of strengthening legal and institutional systems for improvement of air quality and enforcement of waste management. As a result of the launched invasion against Ukraine, which has already led to a large-scale demolition of infrastructure and housing, and generated a large quantity of war-related emergency waste and damage to overall Ukrainian natural environment, there was an urgent need to reorient and replan initially the project APENA 2 objectives. Here I would like to mention the quick and efficient support from the site of EU delegation in Kiev just a few weeks after the beginning of the aggression. When the project work plan was adjusted to include the priority tasks requested by the Ministry of Environment, responding to the current martial law related issues. This is the reason the project is still operational, and our current activities, among which is the communication support and the financing of this survey today. I believe for the discussions of this today's event, it will be very important for everyone, because we will hear first what are the results of the survey, and based on them, we'll know what kind of further communication we should plan for the citizens' perception and insight of the current issues. At the end, as a EU-funded project, we would like to express our continuous engagement in the recovery period of the country and its further preparation for the implementation of the EU environmental requirements in the area of air quality and waste management. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear Evelina. Thank you for your speech. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for a big role of APENA 2 in Euro integration process in Ukraine. Шановні гості,
Dear guests, dear participants of the round table, further I would like to give the floor to the communication expert on project APENA 2, Yvetta Delikatna. She represents the results of the survey miss that we will be able to discuss later on. Yvetta, do you hear us?
Ukrainian, however, on Zoom we continue to hear the translation. I understand it's a synchronous translation, but as I feel, we just on the Zoom we are catching the last phrases of the translation. So I will speak in Ukrainian, and I don't know is Zoom participants should listen, should hear the English translation. They could hear it on YouTube channel, but here in Zoom I will present in Ukrainian, right?
I hope that translation works, and our participants, English speaker participants, could hear translation into English. Let's ask them.
Повертайте слайд на екран, да, я починаю, да.
Turn to the screen, so I start presenting. First of all, I would like to speak about the survey. It was a panel survey. You know, it was a Kiev Institute of Sociology is doing this on a quarterly basis, quantitative method. different respondents, 2,000 of them, and all those surveys are conducted on the Ukraine-controlled territories. 2,000 respondents. It's a big selection, and we have a representative of the institute, and she will be able to explain it in more detail. And the questionnaire was done in the end of May, so it's fresh data. What we're asking about, I would like to emphasize that it was very important for us to see the communications aspect of perceiving ecological consequences of war. So it was not about different ecological aspects, but communication aspects. So we were measuring the awareness level and perception level of those aspects. And we were asking about via which channels people find out about the problems, and do they overall have enough information. And I repeat what Evelina said, this is important for us to plan the communication strategy, how to communicate with Ukrainian people during the war about ecological consequences, what they have to do, what they have to know regarding the effort of the state, etc. What the main result? Here's the list of the ecological consequences of war that arose during the wartime, and we asked people to answer for what is from that standpoint is important for the country and for them. The comparison for them and for the country the answers were pretty similar, and you see the biggest threat for the country and for people is radiation contamination. Then the other mining, poisoning substances after fire at oil depots, contamination of rivers, destruction of forests, and so on and so forth, as you see on the slide. And this correlates between importance for the country and for the people. What was peculiar to see when we were going deeper into detail, there were residents of western part of Ukraine that are further from the combat. By 10% they perceive the threat of radiation contamination. They perceive it to 10% more of a threat than the eastern residents. The same is for dissemination of poisonous materials after fire at oil depots. And the eastern region's residents are less concerned about it, even though they face this problem themselves. And the southern residents that live next to waterbeds, for them the contamination of waters is more important than for the other regions. And what was interesting for us, that the contamination of air and garbage in the territory was on the holding the last positions. But we all know that overall the ecology problems for Ukrainians is not one of the main problems. And we see that, according to these data, that this important aspect as air contamination takes the last place. But the youth is more concerned about the problem of air contamination, that it's a potential threat. And looking at the general sociology, naturally the most active regarding ecological issues are the youth and the group of 30-49 with average income. Regarding the awareness level, the problems that we're speaking about, the problems first, and then it's about awareness, how they understand the threats that arise to the environment during the war. And here I can say, comparing a lot of surveys about awareness of different problems, I can say that the awareness level about ecological consequence of war is quite high. If 22 and 44, it's 66% are aware, and all the other values, that if people are aware about the problem that arise as a consequence of something, for us it's consequence of war, it's a high percentage. It means that people are concerned about this issue, they're tracking it, and they're aware, they know. So the awareness level is quite high. Regarding evaluation of information, it's also decreasing from the west to the east. It's an interesting trend, and the most aware, they think they're most aware about different threats. They're mostly people who have higher education and have more income, so they're interested in information, they watch media. But there is a layer of population that feels uninformed, up to 20%, 30%. And that's the area for improvement, that's the layer of the population that we have to work with, we have to reach. Regarding the assessment of level of informing, also quite high values. Pretty often they work with communication of reforms. And if we recall the average values of understanding and receiving information of reforms, never had over 10-15% over all the years of reforms. But here, it's almost 50%. They say that the information about the threats to the environment, they are enough. That means that the informational saturation of this information is quite high percentage of people are informed, especially comparing to other examples, how they evaluate them. Evaluation of presence of information in media, 55%, they see that info in media next to different topics. From my experience, that's a quite high value. That means that media, they point their attention, they take those materials are available, that's an important moment. It's quite optimistic, positive for communicators. And sufficiency of information, if it's sufficient. It's a lesser figure. They see the information. 55% say they see the information about the ecological consequences of war, but they don't think that it's enough of information. And we have potential for growth here. So 30% of people, they think that it's not sufficient at all. And here displayed by region, going from west to east, less people think that informing is enough, is sufficient enough. It's an interesting trend as well, because we see that in the east, they perceive the ecological threats more seriously, but they think they're less informed. So probably that's their request to this threat. And there is 15% of people that don't point attention to ecological aspects at all. It's also interesting conclusion we can study. And the last piece of information, it's about the channels of information from where people get that info. And of course, it's radio and TV, even though we all go digital, but still we're speaking about the population of a big country, and that's TV, firstly. So 58%, they're saying that they receive that info from news on radio and TV. And that's important for us, for planning of our communication strategy. And as we see, Digital takes a second place. Communication experts that are present here, they will comment. Telegram, Facebook, and it's very, very cool. The ministry of, before the war, managed to open the Telegram channel that grows in subscribers. On official website of state bodies, it's 11%, which is good. Because sometimes the state officials think that if they post it on the official website, everybody will see it, but it's not always like this. And more people now look at their website than yesterday. Look at the figure. Portals, political portals, because in the similar surveys, portals take as much as media usually, and take second or third position. And here they go down. For me personally, it's interesting. Why? And Instagram is where it should be for people who are interested in ecology. Those are the conclusions that I already spoke about. And if you compare social demography, looking at the population 40, 50 plus, there the majority is that even more percentage of the population watches TV and listens to radio. And the younger they are, the more income they have, the more digital they are. Those are the main findings, and it's just a brief conclusions, brief summary. And in the end of our discussion, I might gather from speeches of other experts. I return the floor to Anna, and I would be curious to hear the comments of experts. Yvetta, thank you very much for your such a well-based results of the survey. They are very interesting, those figures, they're very interested. Ukrainians are really interested in the topic of the consequences of war for ecology and the problems of ecology. They rose several points higher than other problems that are of concern for Ukrainians. And we see a lot of damage for environment as a consequence of Russian aggression. And that's why those figures, they're extremely important for us to see and to understand and to discuss. Also, that's why I propose to go to the discussion block. And I would like to give the floor to Mr. Ruslan. We have a request, have a question. We see that Ukrainians, in their way, they see the priorities, the main threats from war to environment. Those are mainly threats that are directly connected to them and threaten their existence, their life. That's radiation and chemical threat, contamination of air, and others. What was named by Yvetta. Mr. Ruslan, could you tell me what is the view of the Ministry of the main threats for environment as the consequence of Russian aggression? And are those priorities and main threats, do they coincide with what we see in the survey? Do they cross with them? Thank you. Dear colleagues, actually, the ministry understands this problem and understands that any absence of information creates uncertainty. And our priorities, they shifted during the aggression from reforming the environment and your implementation to challenges that arise in ecological security as a consequence of Russian aggression. Therefore, we try, firstly, to monitor the events that happen. We try to prevent the consequences. We try to inform the population and to fix those facts, to register those facts. And we put all the efforts into eradicate the consequences of aggression. And naturally, we prepare the claims to the court, to Russia, to the international courts, that in the end of the day, this country would cover all the losses, would cover and compensate all the losses that it caused. It's very important that we firstly try to efficiently inform our population. Pretty often you see on the Telegram channels and in social media, we give instructions on how to protect, from people can protect themselves. We give the opportunity to inform, that population can participate in informing the state bodies about threats. And those are channels, not only traditionals, but also digital channels.
Chile.
As was said already, there are many different channels now. And by the way, the minister also gave the order to develop the Eco-Threat app, where any Ukrainian can notify about the damage they see. So they will add the video and the photo to corroborate the damage inflicted to the environment. It's interesting also to see the results of this survey, especially when we see the worries of the population in the east, in the west, in the south. It coincides with the requests we see in this Eco-Threat, Eco-Zakhozha app. So an event like this is highly relevant. The ministry sees sees these issues from its own walls, but the public, the journalists, the reporters, they give it a deeper meaning and deeper understandings. That's why it's very important to talk about this. We will be able to find some new ways out, new ways to improve the effectiveness of the communication and to increase the awareness of the population. Thank you, Ruslan. So the ministry, as we see, is not working specifically on one threat. As far as I understand, it records all the damage to the environment and works comprehensively, assessing the totality of the damages and finding ways out. It was interesting also to hear the opinion of the KIIS International Sociology Institute. So we have deputy head of the institute, Victoria Zakhozha, and we have a question to you. The topic of the environment hasn't been a top priority previously in the surveys of main problems, what Ukrainians think are the biggest problems for the country. But we see that upon the beginning of the large-scale aggression of Russia, this situation has changed. Can you comment on this trend? It would be good to hear what was special in conducting this survey during wartime. Victoria, the floor is yours. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for inviting me to join this presentation, and thank you for the question. Indeed, environment hasn't been a priority before the war, even though our previous studies have shown that there is some regional specificity here. I mean, it was a relevant priority for the cities which had large-scale industry. There, environment has always been a priority. The fact that now it becomes more important generally I think it's related to the fact that, well, environment is not an isolated topic per se. The environment and ecology is linked intrinsically to personal safety and security of the citizens. So when we talk about the, for example, the sincerity of the respondents, because we saw that in general there was a shift towards a pro-Ukrainian attitude, and it might be an objective thing linked to the aggression, but on the other hand it could be indirectly showing that people with pro-Russian attitude are just uncomfortable in the environment where other ideas are prevalent. So the matters of the environment and personal safety and security is well relevant for anyone, and that's why we do not have any grounds to say that it might be a divisive question, that Ukrainians might have different attitude to the environmental consequences of the war. It is indeed important because it's linked to personal safety and security. I would like to also add a few words about the methodology. First of all, Omnibus. It's not a panel study. A panel study is a study where the same sample of people is surveyed over and over again. So Omnibus is not a panel study, but you are right that indeed in this wave of the Omnibus study we had a panel subsample. So we did a survey of a group of people whom we have surveyed in February, right before the war started. We did that in order to assess whether our current sample is really different from people whom we surveyed before the war. Because if we talk about representativity, and this is the most important factor when we discuss surveys in times of war. Well, we do not have official statistics which would describe the structure of the population. We have lots of migration, both internally and externally. So that is why we decided to have this survey of this sample panel, and our experiment has shown that the representativity of the data is quite high, so we cannot question the results we've received. Another thing I would like to reiterate is about the presentation of the results. You've highlighted these regional differences. And when we talk about regions, you've said that it was only the population of the GCA which were surveyed, but we meant the population of the regions which was the government-controlled area as of February the 24th of this year. So we do not conduct surveys in Crimea or the areas which are occupied since 2014. So the areas which have been occupied this year, they still are reachable by us. So we see that, for example, our cell networks are operating there, so we can just call these people. So it covers those areas too. Also, in the results, we divide the respondents by regions referring to their accommodation as of February the 24th. So if someone from an eastern region has moved to the west, we still would account for them as representative of the eastern region because they were registered there. So perhaps some change in the opinion in the west. You could think that, oh, it's because people from the east relocated there. No, when we say people from the west, it's just people who have been living there as of February the 24th. Also, I would like to say that the data which we present, they have high representativity, and there are some statistical difficulties assessing the precise bias. But in our opinion, sociological studies during times of war are not only relevant, but they are important. We need to do this. And responding to your question, it's also important because political decisions taken on the points, on ideas which are supported by the population, well, they are more successful usually. Also, the decision makers are able to see where are some gaps or lapses in awareness campaigns, so perhaps they can adjust the campaigns and advocacy so that the decisions would be further supported by the people. Thank you, Victoria. We will have questions in the third part of the roundtable. And thank you for the comments regarding the methodology. I would like to draw the attention of the speakers and our guests that now it's war. And of course, some areas have been occupied after February the 24th. But the ministry and the Kyiv International Sociology Institute, they are working. They have contacts of people in the occupied areas, so they can conduct further studies and surveys assessing the opinion of people in those areas. So we appreciate the support of the ministry, and we appreciate those people who are working now there in the occupied territories supporting Ukraine. Thanks to the Institute, and thanks to all Ukrainians who are fighting for our victory. Also, I would like to note that it would be interesting to have another study after the victory and see if the environment would change its place in the list of priorities for Ukrainians. Because, well, environmental problems would not disappear on its own. They will be relevant for quite some time for us, even after the victory. Now, I would like to give the floor to the head of the All-Ukrainian Environmental League, Tetyana Tymochko. Tetyana, it would be very interesting to hear your opinion regarding the results of the study and regarding the biggest threats well, in your opinion, as an expert, what do you think? The threats as shown in the survey, are they really relevant? Hello. Thank you for the question. And special thanks to the Ministry of the Environment and the institute which organized the survey. It is very important. So I have some ideas, first of all, regarding on the survey as such, but also using the opportunity when the environmentalists and the sociologists came together, I also wanted to add a few ideas in this professional circle. But firstly, I would like to say about the place of environmental protection, environmental quality in public minds before the war. I do not agree with the myth, inaudible, which the businesses were imposing in places which are heavily contaminated. The businesses said that, well, there are jobs and that's the most important, and well, then priority for the environment was very low. But that's, I mean, it's a myth. I don't blame the sociologists when they show these results, but it's also a matter of technology. I can say that since 2014, the All-Ukrainian Environmental League has been working in Luhansk and Donetsk Oblast, and we have conducted less authoritative studies, of course, but we also studied how people perceive environmental threats, especially in 2014 and 15 when there was the active phase of in the beginning of the war. And if the matters of the environment are at the end of the list of questions, they will have the least priority. But if you put it high, in top 5, for example, if you have the contamination of air, water and soil, then people will prioritize it significantly higher. So it is a matter of technology and possibility to change the situation. But why did Ukrainians have underestimated the environmental quality for such a long time? I've been working in this NGO movement for quite some time. The All-Ukrainian Environmental League will celebrate its 25th anniversary. So in the last 25 years, our organization and many other NGOs, we were unable to make Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of the Education and Environmental Studies as a mandatory component. It was always optional, and it wasn't a subject to be taught obligatorily. So, well, for example, children, when they don't study it at school, they don't understand that mercury or lead or formaldehyde or benzopyrene, they don't associate it with the inherent hazard. The fact that asbestos is still used for roofing, and it's a toxic, it's a cancerogenic substance which every minute spills out its poisonous particles, and in case of fire, it also emits toxic smoke. Well, people ignore it. Or like mercury. If somebody like breaks a thermometer, some people just use a broom to sweep it. Or children are playing with these balls of mercury. So this indeed is the situation, and that's why Ukrainians do not think the quality of the environment is a priority, even in the areas with industrial contamination. Oh, don't get me started on chlorine in water. Well, children do not study this in schools. It's just no longer in the curriculum. They don't know that chlorine is poison. It kills humans. It causes cancer. So people just drink tap water with chlorine, and nobody knows that. Well, at least they have to leave it overnight for the chlorine to evaporate. And they would immediately put it in the kettle, and like nobody knows that it's dangerous. So when essentially now we are talking about the quality and of the environment and the contamination of the environment, well, we must also state that most Ukrainians are lacking awareness and knowledge of what are the contaminants. That is why the citizens usually do not prioritize these matters because they lack awareness. And that is why usually environmental quality has the least priority, well after salaries or having possibility to rest and so on. Even if we look at the terms which we use, well, there are signs of the lack of awareness because the environmental studies, well, it's a science. It can't be good or bad. We cannot say that, well, it's not relevant. It's a science about the environment. That's what ecology means. The environment might be contaminated or not, but we cannot correct the ecology as such. We can change the environment, but well, the fact that in Ukrainian we might say change the ecology, it just shows lack of awareness. So the Ministry of the Education has to be responsible for this. And the Ministry of the Environment is actually doing a good job. And I can tell you that our league has been cooperating, well, or sometimes criticizing the Ministry of the Environment, but still for many, many years we've been trying to put this matter as a priority. And when in 2010 our NGO and other NGOs took part in the development of the first strategy of the national environmental policy, at the end of that meeting we managed to convince, well, not the whole public, not the businesses, not the MPs, but only the Ministry of the Environment. But we managed to convince the Ministry of the Environment that, well, changes in the awareness must be the first strategic priority in the national environmental strategy until 2020, as approved by the Parliament of Ukraine. Even though, well, it took a lot of effort to convince the MPs and the legal directorate of the Parliament, and the first objective there was the change of awareness. Well, it was difficult to convince them, and the response was very similar.
The trouble is in our heads regarding the issues of environment. And therefore, the first priority, and our minister says, it's not about education, but about bringing knowledge and informing. And in the end, I would like to point your attention that informing about the status of environment, it's legally binding, because Ukraine ratified in 1999 the Corgo Convention about the access to information and participation of civil society in policy decisions and in issues of relevant to environment. And this Aarhus Convention is binding not only for civil society and also for state bodies for making environmental information available, and for the ministry in particular. Regarding the survey itself, I think I'm convinced. Listen to it, and I would like to study in more detail. It was done very professionally. It was absolutely objective. I didn't see any, subjective matters. Even though I agree with Victoria that during martial law, we have to, and we need to conduct surveys, but not only where they give information to us, but they could be motivating to mold certain perception of people regarding the information. But that survey is completely neutral, and it provides a lot of information to, firstly, the ministry. And I would like to mention that media, since day one of the war, they point attention to those issues. I remember in the night on 24th to 25th of February, at 3:52 a.m., I got a phone call from journalists, and we couldn't sleep. I got a phone call from journalists. Russia entered Chernobyl nuclear plant and asked me for a comment. And I said, starting from that minute, there's not a single day, every single day I have calls from 2, 3, 5 medias. They reach one same channel. First, I didn't realize it was a bit different. But journalists, they point a lot of attention to it. And I'm really grateful for that to the journalists, that they are caring about it. Regarding the Ministry of Environment Protection, we have enough information, and that's what survey showed. We have information on the website and on Facebook, but I'm convinced, and I know that ministry is preparing now those events, those meetings. We have to work in advance, be proactive, not follow the fact, but knowing. We have specialists. They know where are the critical territories, where are the critical objects, where are the critical spots that have been damaged. And we have to be proactive and inform what could happen and how to prevent it. So that part, I think, in the close future, the ministry will change, and I know there is a task to that end, and that's really important. And besides, I think it's necessary to increase the role of state ecological inspection. If the ministry fulfills that role and molds that knowledge and gives the information, then state ecological inspection as this NGO, as in all the region's territory, even on the occupied territories now, not that, but recently occupied territories, are active as state due to different circumstances, and we have information. But state, even on the free territories, our inspection lacks the operations. Even for the calls of the citizens that are concerned about some objects, they could wait for long for a visit to an inspector. The inspector comes without the lab equipment that is necessary, without the possibility to take samples and process samples and give the definitions of the contamination level. Information regarding existing objects that are studied, the state ecological inspections in the regions does not provide. And I think that is our separate issue. We will write a letter regarding this amorphous and positions. We have to correct this situation because citizens on the local level, they understand that there is an ecological inspection. They have to tell us something. No, they don't tell anything. Just take some samples and go on. Just inform the activists that called you. Inform the local authorities, not even the civilians, just the local bodies, the local municipalities. Where you were, what you studied, what's the results, what are the findings, and it's not happening now. So if state ecological inspections started working as they should, the percentage of information, the percentage of informed people would greatly increase. Even now, it's quite sufficient, but right now I think it's at the expense of media and the ministry. Here they need to put more effort into it. I would like to ask the organizer of the survey make the survey once again. This would be very interesting to see. Just some time has passed. Ministry imposed social measures. The inspection has changed approach. Maybe more operation with media. So it's not just, media wanted and asked. Then the ministry gives a reply. But I, as NGO, don't expect to be asked. We write to journalists. We work with. We write any information that we found. We give to the channels, and that creates informational event because journalists weren't aware or they're busy with something else. Therefore, the ministry has more opportunities than NGOs to reach media, and it should be a constant and more large-scale presence of ministry in press. And this would only add to the effort. Like in traditional media also as well. I know in Telegram there's more of ministry, and in Facebook, yes, there is high-quality information, but in traditional media, what people watch, they should increase their presence there, because that's important. And regarding the level of contamination, that's an important thing. People are scared by radiation because 36 years in media, they were the consequences of Chernobyl catastrophe, and people felt it. Thousands and thousands of people, they know what radiation contamination is. The kids have grown, the kids of those who were giving birth back then during Chernobyl catastrophe, and their children have grown up, and they see the thyroid gland issues, the other diseases. They understand this. Therefore, the radiation threat is on the first place. I was astonished that the air contamination took almost the last spot. It's not because of the enterprises. Mariupol was destroyed. For years we're fighting against those industrial giants. We came there and fought with the owners and directors, but when I saw those shambled enterprises, my heart broke because there's huge material losses, thousands of jobs, and they formed budgets, and it was very sad. It was very, very sad. But people did not understand. They were hiding in the cellars, and they were inhaling the fumes when the fire was. That's all was poison that were inhaling, and they were not aware. And I was astonished by it. I possibly we should make people more aware and explain more about what you meant by air contamination, maybe add info about the damage to the environment from not only from oil depots, but and ammunition, but from buildings on fire. It could even cause more damage to civilians. It's a big danger. It's poison that children and elderly people and all the people they inhale daily. Maybe we should work more on this topic altogether. Because for people, even though there were no bombardments, let's just say heavy bombardments, but a lot of fire, that's a huge threat. All the rest, I'm not surprised that students have more information, because that's internet, that's digital, that universities have more info. Social networks add knowledge, and kids know more. But people above 30 or 40 concerned about ecology, it's not only a surprise, because those people have average income, so they have material basis, and they can think about their health and the health of their children. So it all pieces of puzzles come together, and it's absolutely adequate results, and I'm really grateful to organizers and those who implemented that work. It's extremely important to correct the situation. There are areas for improvement, of course, but it's a right path. It's the right path and a roadmap for our operations, the NGOs and ministry. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Tetyana. Thank you for professional comments, advices, and strategic view on the problem. And actually, the work of all, the Ministry of Environmental Protection and Ministry of Education, and probably the Ministry of Healthcare, and naturally journalists that were put a lot of effort in informing the community, and that's our informational front that helps us. Thank you. And now I would like to give the floor to head of the Administration of Change Communication, Olena Lobova. Olena, it's very interesting to hear from you, NGO Change Communication, to hear from you, how can we improve communication with the population regarding the consequences from war to the environment. And we see that some channels of communication are used more actively than others, and different auditorium, different parts of society, they use different channels. As Tetyana mentioned, some are perceived as more important, like radiation. It's very sensitive for our population because we have certain experience with Chernobyl tragedy. So I would like to hear your thought about how we can improve communication on this matter. Thank you for the question. First of all, I would like to say that I'm pleasantly astonished about awareness level and understanding that ecological problems, because all the previous years we were watching this topic, the ecology topic, we pointed attention that it was in the sphere of interest and the problems that are of concern for Ukrainians. It was always on one of the last positions, and I trust sociologists here, because if the questions are put correctly, people choose what's more acute to them, and ecology was always the last topical. And here, as a communicator, I see absolute confirmation that all laws of communications, they work. As soon as the communication space is saturated with a certain topic, we start paying attention to it. Especially when this topic starts, there's more psychology of person. If this topic appears in the stress factor, war is a stress factor, it's the biggest stress possible. through which we all go. Our informational field is filled with info about the threat, possible threat of nuclear weapons, about possible combination of poisonous chemicals. We all watched what's happening in Mariupol, and every threat, every possible threat, even on the level of rumors, the info that we get that possibly they use chemical weapons, it immediately started Googling, looking for information, what kind of chemical weapons, what chemicals they are, what chemicals could be possible, and it reflects the results of the surveys. So the law is quite simple. The more person receive information, the more they think about it, the more they start being curious about it. And if we want the problem to stay in focus, it has to be informational space. Here, it would be very interesting to see if there is an opportunity for the project monitoring of media. Correlation, I think I'm convinced it exists, but I would like to confirm by facts, to see what percentage of the topic of each of the lists, radiation, mining, poisonous substances, air contamination, what is the share of presence of those topics in informational space, and how it correlates with what people think is the biggest threat, that they perceive as the biggest threat. I'm convinced this correlation would be almost 100%. The more topic is present in the informational field, the more we think about it. Regarding the channels of communication, if we want information to be disseminated fast and to reach the audience, we have to use the channels of communication that this audience uses. I have some questions here to the survey. Regarding how we formulate the name of channels of communication, because when we usually if we ask people where we get the information, where did you read this, mom, or neighbor, where did you see this? Somewhere in the internet. People don't always differentiate, and usually they don't differentiate the different channels of the internet. I reached the official site of website of the ministry. Usually people don't do it early in the morning, it's just the usual thing. But for them it's still somewhere in the internet, even if it's official website. It could be a TV channel website, like Single Marathon. In any case, so a person can come and can watch YouTube, see a TV episode, but for a person it's still somewhere in the internet. So somewhere in the internet, I would put that into the questionnaire and would see how it reflects the names of the channels. Pretty often people, it could make a certain bias of the information that we receive from the survey. The questions are formulated difficultly, or sources of information are expressed in an unclear way. But in any case, the survey is fully correlating with the other source of info regarding those channels of information. TV still competes with the internet and often is ahead of it. It's interesting to watch how the conference of Facebook and Telegram changes since the start of the war. Telegram is ahead of Facebook, and it's clear explanation why. Telegram channels, they have a quality that if you put post information there often, you see them in your on your wall all the time. And it's it's very convenient to use that you watch the same Telegram channels all the time. During the time of war, it's very informing is very important for us. Especially the first week, we were watching the news all the times, and we were watching Telegram channels. Telegram channels are worth creating for the organizations and state bodies and services, institutions that actually have a lot of info to share, and that they can post often on those channels. Yes, Telegram now becomes more and more popular, but go and develop it only when you have during the day you have lots of different news to inform the people about, and it has to be something interesting, something that people will be interested in. Ministry of Ecology, they have this opportunity. I think it will be very curious to receive informing regarding all the threats, if there are. If there is an opportunity regarding regions, split per regions, well, what's happening in which region, that which would draw attention. I'm not astonished that the air takes less spots, because the problems of that are at least present in the informational field. What can I say tracking those issues? I cannot confirm my thought with the results of media monitoring because I don't have them, but just from personal perception, this topic is not actively covered in informational field.
I would like to add, now we have a good opportunity when the environment is more a priority for the population, so we can start talking about waste, both municipal waste and the situation at landfills or waste processing. Previously, this issue has been hindered by the corruption. And now, when environmental problems become a priority, maybe we can start talking about landfills and how and what will we do with all the waste created. So I think now it's a good opportunity to start talking about this. Thank you, Olena. Thank you for your comments. It's good that we have such a comprehensive discussion. We've talked about social studies, we've talked about national policies and the communication. It really is a comprehensive approach. So we have 10 minutes left for the questions and answers and to conclude our event. So my proposal is, online participants, if you want to ask a question, show your hand and I will give you the floor if I will be able to see all the participants on the screen. So there are no questions from online participants, right? We do have a question from Oleg Hrechanyk. I didn't see it. Okay. Oleg, please, the floor is yours. Hello, dear colleagues. I'm Oleg Hrechanyk. I'm the communications manager of the reform support team at the Ministry of the Environment. I would like to give 2 comments on this event's topic. First of all, the study which we've been discussing has shown that Ukrainians are very interested in the environment. And my first point is that we need to keep on working jointly with the Ministry of the Environment and the NGOs to make sure that we respond to this high level of interest. And my second point is that, well, achieving victory, of course, international support is vital for this, and the support of the EU is also very important. So I'd like to say thanks to the EU for funding this survey. And recently also there was a publication that the interest to war in Ukraine fell 22%, which of course is a sad fact. But the topic of the environment was always relevant for international reporters. The Ministry of the Environment has published several press releases, and they were rebroadcasted with the CNN, BBC, New York Times, Washington Post, and so on. So the reporters of those media and the expert organizations of Europe, they understand that environmental pollution has no borders. So the situation in Ukraine directly influences other countries, especially when we're talking about radioactive contamination. So my point is, we need to continue informing, not just within Ukraine, but also we need to keep informing the international audience, because this is our chance to keep international focus of attention on Ukraine, so that the world would not forget about this war, and so that we would win. Thank you, Oleg, for this great advice. Let me ask the audience in this room, do you have any questions to the speakers? I don't see any questions in the room. Anybody else online who has a question? No questions. So I give the floor to Yvetta Delikatna for the concluding remarks. Thank you so much. All the comments were very on the point. Thanks, Victoria. Thanks, Tetyana. And I really want to hug you strongly for saying that the first line in the reform was the awareness and communication strategy. Indeed, for us, the communication specialists, it's so important. Because usually in reforms or with authorities, communications are somewhere at the end. But for us, well, it's important that the authorities see how relevant the communications are as a component. So hopefully this attitude continues, and people would remember that communication is the really important function of the management, not just something additional. So of course we also would like to say thanks to the EU who funded it, and to the APENA 2 project. It was a great thing. As Tetyana said, indeed, these studies should come again and again, and, well, every year, or hopefully every quarter, that would be even better. Yeah, so hopefully we can plan something for the future. So, yeah, so communication is important, and planning communication on the basis of studies is really my key takeaway from this event. Also, it was really great to see such a high level of awareness, and thanks to Olena for saying that it has that there's direct correlation between awareness and communication. So we can actually see how a strong communication effort yields its result, and it should be a very important component in European project, in the work of Ukrainian authorities. I also have written down a few takeaways. Thanks to Victoria for this highlight of personal safety. You are right. If we look at the values of Ukrainians, the matter of safety and security is in top 3, and perhaps the importance of the environmental problems was so high because it was linked to personal safety needs. And we need to use this in our communications. And I agree that, well, all the environmental matters should be a cross-cutting things in school curricula and even kindergarten curricula. This is a task for the years to come. So, thanks a lot to everyone for this. It's been a very good comment that the environment and ecology, well, they shouldn't be mixed. It's important, even for us, the communication managers, to use the terms correctly. So, these were the key takeaways I would like to add to what was previously said. Thank you so much. It has been a very, very useful exchange. Thank you, Yvetta. And I would like to say thanks again to all the participants for this very professional discussion. You all made it so professional. And thanks to the Ministry of the Environment and Natural Resources of Ukraine. Thanks to the EU delegation to Ukraine, thanks to the Kyiv International Sociology Institute, thanks to All-Ukrainian Environmental League, thanks to Change Communication, and special thanks to Media Center Ukraine, Ukrinform, who made this event possible and who gave us the venue. Thank you and goodbye.